30 Minutes with Ron.
Hi, and welcome to 30 Minutes with Ron. I'm Larry Walters.
And I'm Nicholas Walters.
And we'll be your host today. Our special guest today is Ron Gagliardi. Ron is normally the host of this show, but today is our special guest. And I think you're going to enjoy hearing from him and all the wonderful things that he's accomplished in recent years. In fact, we like to call Ron a Renaissance man, or as he likes to quip, a Renaissance man. So Ron, we want to welcome you to your own show, and thank you for the opportunity to be here.
My pleasure.
You know, Ron, as I look down through the list, you've done so many things. You've been an artist, an author, a cartoonist, a stand-up comedian, and as you like to say, a lifelong quipster, a historian, a musician, a philosopher, teacher of both art and English, a TV host, a videographer, and a writer of children's books. And as I look through this list, all these things seem to say something about communication, whether word or music or in song. So tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I've always felt that communicating to people is an interesting item to do. People need to find out about stuff, and I feel that I have a way of saying stories or telling stories, and that's what I try to do in all those different media.
Now, Ron, when I look at Ron, you are an artist and art teacher for almost 30 years, and I've even taught cartooning for 20 years. How did you get started in art, and what has kept you going in it for so many years?
Well, I think what started me in art is the fact that I had good eye-hand coordination. I think that's helpful in just about anyone who's planning to do and having an art career. And because of that, I was able to draw well and copy things. And my style showed in my classes, and the teachers were able to say, "Oh, this guy's pretty good." So that got me thinking, maybe I could do art beyond just doing it in classes. But I was never really going to do it as a career, but it kind of happened, and I'll tell you a little bit about that later. But you did ask about art. So I was into it. I was into it as a kid, and I did a little bit as I got older.
When did you realize you had a talent for art and decided on it as a career?
Well, the talent I found out about when I was a little kid, but the career was a little bit circuitous, as you would say. I was going to be a language teacher, and I had French, Italian, Latin, and Spanish. And after a while I said, you really don't know much of any of those languages, so it's going to be tough to teach them. So I looked around for another career or another major in college, and I decided, I could be a science major, because I always liked science, and I collected butterflies and all that stuff. And then I found out there was math in the science curriculum. And I said, well, I can't add. So I really was very poor at math. So I looked in the catalog, and there was one course that had no math, and it was art major. So in the middle of my sophomore year in college, never having had an art course, except maybe 8th grade like everybody did, I became an art major. And I was at a little bit of a disadvantage because I was with people who had already been taking art classes since they were in middle school and high school. But I managed to persevere, and I ended up being an art teacher, which was a great career.
Well, great. So what art mediums do you specialize in, such as drawing or painting? I mean, which one do you enjoy the most of all?
I don't really enjoy painting that much. For some reason, I don't like to get my hands messy or my clothing, so I tend to avoid paint. I do some drawing and the cartooning, but I also do something that I call ready-mades. Ronnie made ready-mades, and I take things that normally would end up in the trash and turn them into artworks. So, for example, if you buy batteries, there's this blister pack of plastic on it, and I'll take that and I'll paint it or I'll add lines to it, and I'll put it in a frame and hang it up. So I don't throw it out.
So what subjects do you like to draw or paint?
Well, butterflies are my favorite because I've always loved butterflies. I've collected butterflies. I did stop killing them, though. I decided it was time to stop killing the poor things, and now I only raise them, and I let them go so the rest of the world can see them. So butterflies, I guess, are the thing that I like to draw the best.
Okay, so why is art important to you?
Art is an important thing. Well, one of the things about art is that if you do it and display it, people get to see it. And I like people to see what I've been doing, and especially entering art shows. I belong to the Cheshire Art League, and so every so often we have a show, and I put my art in it, and people get to see it and comment on it. I do like attention, and I like my art to draw attention, and that's one reason why I like to do art.
Now, Ron, you're also an author, both of historical books and children's books. How'd you get started in that, and what kind of books do you like to write about?
I got started when I was a little kid. Even then, when I would read a book and see the name of the author on the book spine and on the front cover, I thought, that's a cool thing. Wouldn't that be nice to do that? And so when I was, I think, in 4th grade, I wrote a book called Peblo Goes to Market. And I had a friend who helped me write it, but I did the illustrations for it. And I was so proud of Peblo Goes to Market that I still kept it. I have it to this day. It's like, I don't know, 60 years old or so. But after that, I said, it would be really great to be a book author and actually have a book out there. And I wasn't actually sure it was going to happen. But a coincidence happened. I went to talk to someone about some photos that he was going to lend me for something. And he was an author for Arcadia Publishing. He had done, I think, the New Haven book and the Waterbury book and one other. And so he asked me, would you like to do the Cheshire book? And no one had done one for Arcadia at that point. And I thought, wow, I mean, I am kind of into history, and that would be a logical extension. So what happened is he recommended me to Arcadia. They sent me the author's packet, which is letting them know what my style is. I had to submit how I write. And they wanted demographics of Cheshire, that kind of stuff. And they accepted me. So I did a book. It was called Images of America, Cheshire. It was published in 2001. It took me almost a year to do it. It was about 1,000 hours of research and editing and typing. And it came out, and there I was. I was on a book spine. And the nice thing about being on a book spine is that it's going to be on people's shelves for a while, even after I kick off. So I'll still be around.
How do you come up with other subjects to write about?
That's a tough one. With children's books, I guess it depends on situations. If I see someone who's having a problem, I think, oh, that could make an interesting children's book. For example, I'm working on a series of people who are having either successes or problems, and I'm calling it Walk a Mile in My Shoes. And so I found someone who was really, really tall. It was like 6'8", and I asked him about what it's like to be tall. And so his book will be all about the positives and the negatives of being tall. And then I found another person who was very, very short, and that was another whole story. And there's another person who has Apert syndrome, which is facial disfigurement, born that way. And he had like 35 operations. And so there's a whole progression there of what it was like to be in one condition and then get to another condition. So that's one of the ways I look to find stories.
Now, once you come up with a story or an idea to write about, how then do you go to approach it? Do you just sit down and write, or do you come up with an outline, or how do you do it?
I usually do something called an A to Z list. And any of you listeners out there, if you're ever looking for a way to come up with solutions to problems or brainstorm, I recommend the A to Z list. What you do is you write the alphabet vertically down the side of a page, and you try to come up with something for each letter. It's kind of like the feeling that you get, I guess, if you're a crossword puzzle fan. You get a real joy out of completing all the squares. So if you get all 26 letters, that's a real fun thing. I can usually average about 15, even if I don't know anything about something. And so when I'm writing a book, I go like N would be for new items in the book. T would be title. S would be subject. And then I start making the chapters if I'm going to do a chapter book. And I found a very simple way that other people might want to use. People who collect baseball cards have these 9-pocket pages. They're made of plastic, and you slip the cards in them. So if I'm writing a book and I'm going to have 25 chapters, I cut out 25 pieces of paper and put them in the pockets. And then I decide, well, I want to have this thing happen here, and then this thing happen there. But then after a while, I might want to change that, so I just pull it out and move it into another pocket. I find that better than just taking pages and moving them around. So that's the best way I have found for starting out writing a book.
Now, if you have someone who's interested in writing, they like to write, what kind of advice would you give them about getting started? How would they approach it?
Well, one of the best things is to write about what you know, because you don't have to do that much research. If you don't know about something, then you got to do a lot of research. If you're writing children's books, there's a group called the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And it was founded many years ago. Two of the main founders were Tommy DePaola, who grew up in Meriden, and Jane Yolen. And they're like really top-notch children's book authors and illustrators. And this group has chapters all over the country. The Hamden chapter is the one that I lead. I've been directing it for 25 years. And what you do is you join SCBWI. And if you do that, I think it's $75 for dues or something. I don't know, but don't worry about that. And then they get you these books that they will let you know how to do writing of children's books. It also tells you the editors who are leaving one place and going to another place, that kind of stuff. And we meet once a month, our group, and we talk about our work, and we show it to each other, and we critique each other, and we help each other out.
Great.
Yeah, that's what I would recommend.
Now, we also understand that you're a musician. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I was a nice Italian youth at one time, and it turns out that many Italian youth have to take accordion lessons. Not exactly sure why that happens, but that's the way it was in my family. So I started taking accordion lessons, and I took accordion lessons for 9 years. And at the end of those 9 years, I played accordion like I had taken lessons for 2 years. Was not that great an accordionist. I did get to play Lady of Spain, which, of course, if you're an accordionist, you have to know how to play Lady of Spain. Around the time after my ninth year of being an accordionist, there was a band in New Haven, the East Coast Sounds, who was looking for an organist, keyboard guy. Their guy was leaving to join the service, and it turns out that he was one of the best keyboard guys in the whole state of Connecticut. And so they needed someone, and they needed someone who could pay for their own keyboard. And at that time, I had a little bit of money, and I could do this. And they came to me, of all people, and they said, "How would you like to be our keyboard guy?" And I said, "Oh, that would be a fulfilling thing. That would be like one of the wonderful things that I'd love to do." But I really wasn't that good. In my case, one of the problems was when you're an accordion player, you have these buttons over here, and that gives you your bass chord or bass note. When you are playing a keyboard, you have to use 3 or 4 fingers to do that. And my fingers weren't trained to do that. So I was a little bit handicapped as a keyboard guy. But they stuck with me for 2 years, and everybody else in the band was fantastic, but I was like not as good. But I tried, and it was fun.
How long have you been playing the accordion? I understand you said 9 years,
yes,
correct?
I took lessons for 9 years, and then I kind of put it away to let it collect dust, and it had a great dust collection. It's now sitting in my garage, and every so often I have another friend who also played accordion, and we take the accordions out and we scare each other.
Now, Ron, I understand you're also an English teacher, and now most people are glad to get done with school. Why did you want to go back and teach?
Well, I always wanted to be a communicator, like you said at the beginning, and I felt that I had a knack of being able to interest people in stuff. And the way I teach is I kind of fool around a lot. I make faces and I do all kinds of strange things and make strange quips. And the kids seem to enjoy that. So I'm figuring even adults like to be entertained when they learn, so do kids. So I thought I would make a pretty good teacher because I could do that. And I think you're asking there, why did I end up being an English teacher? Is one of the things. I had always advised people, never be an English teacher. Of all the teachers you might want to be or not be, don't be an English teacher. And the reason for that is, when you're an English teacher, you give a lot of assignments, and people got to do all this writing. And you are the corrector of these assignments, and not only do you have to correct them, but you have to correct them correctly, because your corrections are going to be there for the kids and their parents to see. So in addition to all this time you have to put into it, you have to be basically perfect in what you're talking about. So I had always decided myself to stay away from teaching English. Fortunately or unfortunately, I had been subbing at Cheshire High School, and the director of English at Cheshire Academy found that their English teacher was going to be absent for the first week of school. And so she called the English department chair at Cheshire High School and said, "Can you recommend someone?" And he recommended me. So I went to Cheshire Academy, I interviewed with this young lady, and she said, "All right, you can be our sub for the week." So I started teaching. The first day was done. I thought I did fairly well. The kids seemed interested. And this lady came up to me, and she said, "Ron, I don't know exactly what it is that you have, but you are the talk of the campus. Everybody's saying about this great teacher. He's so much fun, and we're going to learn a lot of stuff. Would you like to teach English for the rest of the year?" And I thought, wow, that's a shock. I said, okay. You know, they were going to divide the class because there were too many kids. That's why they were able to hire me. And I ended up teaching English and enjoying it. But again, I wouldn't recommend it. It's a lot of work.
Are there particular subjects in English that you enjoy teaching more than others?
Poetry. I used to have a poem in the Cheshire Herald. There was a period for 7 years where I wrote a weekly limerick-style poem. So that was like, I couldn't even tell you the math. But that was a lot of time, a lot of lengthy time of writing poems. And the nice thing about it for me was that when people read the letters to the editor, and they often do, they can get my idea in like 10 seconds. It's like real quick. So that's poetry. That's what I like to write the most.
Now, if you advise people not to teach English, what subjects would you advise them to teach?
Well, I was an art teacher for over 30 years, and I still teach art in a couple of places, and I teach cartooning. And as far as I'm concerned, teaching art was like not having to work. It was like just having fun every day. And in addition to that, I like to do comedy, kind of. And I had 6 or 7 audiences a day who couldn't run away. And so that was a good thing. They couldn't throw tomatoes either.
Now, we know you're a TV host and a producer. Tell us about the show you were in.
Well, let's see. I've done a fair amount of TV stuff, local level mostly. I found out that my parents used to shower me with attention, both my mother and my father. And so I decided I like attention. And one of the ways to get attention for free is to go to a cable station and learn how to do all the shooting and the editing and stuff, and you can have your own show. So for 9 years in the 90s, I had a show called Rendezvous, which is a play on words of the French rendezvous, which is a meeting place. And I had Ron's Day View, Ron's View of the Day. And I interviewed people, and when we went to Disney World, I showed our family doing all kinds of fun stuff. And that was a fun thing. So I did that, and then recently, I think it was April, a young lady came up with the idea of having this show. And for some reason, she decided that she wanted me to be the host. And so she talked to one of the techs here, and he called me up and said, "How would you like to do a show for this young lady?" And I thought, a show. Well, that means one show. But no, it was like a show meaning once a month. So now I think this is our 6th or 7th show, and I'm enjoying it. And now I get to be interviewed, which, by the way, was not my idea. Although I like attention, I probably wouldn't have decided to have me interviewed. But this was our producer's idea, and I thank her for it. I think after I kick off, maybe we'll play this at the wake.
Wow, I think that's quite an accomplishment. So what subjects have you covered, and who have been some of your guests during your previous shows?
Well, the first show we did was about the Hope Pregnancy Center in Cheshire. And then we did one about bullying and anti-bullying. That was with the one of the young ladies who works in the youth services area, and the policeman at the high school. And we did one where there was a teacher of drawing at Arts Place, and he was having a course that was offered free to veterans. So a couple of veterans came on and talked about what they had learned. Then there was a gentleman who's a professor emeritus of geology at Central Connecticut, and he talked about the geology of Cheshire and Connecticut. And then we had a gentleman who was a Vietnam veteran who had discovered that the reason that the government told that the war started, which was the Gulf of Tonkin incident and the torpedoing and stuff, had never happened. So he was one of I think he was the last show that we did. And now there's this one.
Great. So where can people tune in to watch these shows?
Well, I believe there's a couple of places. One of them is Position 15 at Cox Communications. And I think it's on 5:30s on Wednesdays, I think now. But our producer puts it on Facebook, I think, and maybe on YouTube. But I think you can Google it, and then just Google 30 Minutes with Ron, and you can see the wondrousness of this group of shows.
Now for some fun activities.
Oh, boy, fun activities.
Ron, we hear that you are a stand-up comedian. Tell us, what is a stand-up comedian, and where do you practice your comedy?
Well, a stand-up comedian is someone who doesn't mind being in a situation where they're the only person on stage and they're trying to get people to laugh. And getting people to laugh is not the easiest thing in the world. And so normally they start out at clubs. In my case, I started out doing emceeing. There were like spoof beauty pageants and talent shows, and people said, "Well, Ron, you're pretty glib. You know, you can talk to groups. You don't get too nervous." Although my ears tend to turn red. They're probably turning red now. So I started doing emceeing, and then I had an opportunity to win a contest to be on the stage of Joker's Wild Comedy Club in New Haven. And it was a goal of mine to do stand-up at an actual comedy club. But I also did not want to be bothered with having to memorize stuff, because as a geezer myself, I didn't really want to have to worry about forgetting things. So I decided to do one of my A to Z lists of some of the quips that I had come up with. And I called myself Gagman the Geezer Guy, and I wore one of the flat hats that geezers tend to wear. And I got the call on a Tuesday, I think, that they said I could be in the contest. And they said, "By the way, you're going to come in on," I think it was Thursday night, "and do your 6 minutes of stand-up." And I had never prepared 6 minutes of stand-up, but the A to Z list helped. And I went over there to the show, and I did my 6 minutes. There were some laughs, What I'd said was to the people, I don't like to have to worry about memorizing stuff, so you're going to help me. You're going to shout out your favorite letter, and I'm going to read that joke. And if it's funny, thank you. If it's not funny, it's your fault. So I got some laughs and no tomatoes again. And that was my first try at stand-up. And then somehow someplace heard of me that was a place for assisted living. And they wanted me to do my stand-up, but also talk about ways to preserve your life after you're gone, like a biography kind of stuff. So that was my second appearance. But other than that, I appear every day in front of classrooms in Cheshire doing my version of stand-up and making faces and strange comments.
Do you actually get paid for telling jokes?
Well, I got paid at the assisted living place. I think they paid me $100. The Joker's Wild, if you're really good and you've been known for this, you could probably get paid. But I did not get paid for that appearance.
So the better the jokes, the more money.
Yes.
So tell us about the funniest joke you've ever told.
Well, you had asked me about that a while back, and I really don't know if the funniest joke that I've ever told. I've gotten some laughs at things, but there was one that I liked that was kind of hard for some folks to pick up on. It's a small poem based on a nursery rhyme. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, and his summer was pretty good too. Don't laugh, you'll encourage him.
Now, we know you're a philosopher, and we understand that you follow a concept which you invented called OPIAO, which stands for only positivity in and out, or inside and out. What is that, and how do you practice that?
Well, I pronounce it OPAO. I even have a little cartoon character that has two names, Opie and AO. And OPAO is a way of dealing with the world where nothing negative comes in, and I don't let anything negative go out. And as a matter of fact, it used to be called no negativity in or out. And I was explaining this to one of the classes I was teaching. And then I realized, wait a minute, there's two negatives in there. You can't have no and negativity in something that's supposed to be positive. So I changed it to only positivity in and out. And what that means is I try to be as perfect as I can as a person. So like no vengeance, no anger, no lying, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And if some conflict does come my way, which occasionally it does, even though I try to be nice, I try to make it so that there's a positive outcome of it. And if I have an opponent or an adversary in this conflict, I treat them as well as I can, and I try to treat people anyway the way all folks should be treated.
Exactly.
So that's OPAO.
Well, great. But is it hard to keep that up day in and day out?
Not at all. It's so easy. It's like I'm the happiest person I know, and partially because of OPAO. You can't be unhappy when everything around you is just full of nice happiness.
Would you encourage others to adopt this concept?
Yes, I would. As a matter of fact, I wish it could go worldwide. I was hoping to have a tattoo. I wanted to have the word OPIAO on this arm, and then I was going to have my character OPAO drawn on this one in the tattoo. And I mentioned this a couple of times in the company of my wife, who, by the way, is a wonderful person, a sainted person, just to be married to me for as long as we've been married. So she never objected, as far as I could tell in these conversations. But a couple of weeks ago, I actually went to a tattoo parlor to find out the cost, how much pain am I going to have. And I came home with the brochures, and I put them on the table, and I said, Di, look, I'm going to get the tattoos. And she said, no, you're not. No husband of mine at age 67 is going to go out and get tattooed. I said, but Diane, they're going to be helpful for my campaign. I want to have like vanity license plate with OPAO. So it's up in the air as to whether or not I'm going to be able to have the tattoos that I wanted. But that's one thing that I wanted to do with OPAO. But in answer to your question, if you could have OPAO in your mind as often as I do, I even put it in my emails as the top and bottom of my emails, it's impossible not to have a happy life.
Okay, good.
What have been some of the biggest challenges in exercising OPIAO? Is there an event you could share with us that was particularly difficult?
Well, there was a conflict a while back with an organization that I belonged to. And I don't want to mention the organization because I wouldn't want to cast any aspersions, because that would be negativity. And so I wasn't treated as happily as I would have liked. And I was kind of on the receiving end of some negativity. And I thought, well, this is a great opportunity, because many people in this situation would kind of strike back and insult people and be nasty. But this was an opportunity to see if OPAO is actually working. And so what I found was, even though I was under a little stress, I didn't insult anyone. I didn't say negative things about the situation. And I'm still not saying negative things about the organization because I'm still a member and I still do great things. They do great things and I help them with sometimes. So it makes it an easy thing to do. It was an opportunity to test it. And because if you're never tested in some of these things, you never know if it's going to work.
Well, Ron, you're a great communicator, and you've shown that in many ways. What are the new challenges that you're looking forward to taking on?
Well, there's a thing called MICA. MICA means Made in Connecticut Arts. And it's an organization that's an umbrella organization for artists in the state of Connecticut. And our goal is to help artists to become better businessmen and better businesswomen, and also to become better artists, if we can help them, and get more exhibits. And so it's a little bit tough as a one-man staff without any grants so far to do this, but we have some membership, and we've been lining up some shows and talking to a lot of people, and so far it's going pretty well. So that's going to be a lot of communicating, and hopefully we'll get some press, media to help us, and the artists seem to be excited about it.
Do you have a website for that people could look it up?
We do have a website, but there's a problem here. I was about to present at a conference, and we just had designed our brochure, which may actually be ending up on the screen as we speak. And we had enough time to reserve the domain name, but we didn't have enough time to build the website. So even though I was handing this out, I was telling people, opposite of what most people would be saying, oh yeah, go to our website. No, don't go to our website. It's got to be built. So we're working on getting it built. So I won't tell you the website because you can't get anything there.
Good.
So do you have any concluding thoughts that you'd like to share with us today?
Let's see. I guess one of them would be nice. Get OPAO in your life if you can. Another one would be the A to Z list. It's such a simple thing, and I've recommended it to so many people, and so many folks just laugh at me and say, well, that's a stupid thing, I use that if I want to think of somebody's name. But it really works, and I've even invented things based on trying to get a letter for K or H or something. And it's just a wonderful activity. So that would be the second thing that I would recommend. Try OPAO and make those A to Z lists.
Well, Ron, I want to thank you very much for being our guest today. We really appreciate it and sharing your fascinating history with us.
Yes, I agree, Ron. We do appreciate you coming to speak with us tonight and discuss your life history.
Well, thank you. And I want to point out that I did have a bell on the table. I specifically did not ring the bell because I want to be offered the Nobel Peace Prize.
Or the Nobel Bell Prize, right?
Well, yes, but there was no bell tonight, so we had peace.
Uh-huh. And no, you can't ring it, though, you're saying.
No. And also, it would wreak havoc with the sound booth. It would be, very bad.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks so much again for coming. Fascinating history. Really appreciate it. I know our listeners, enjoy it as well.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. So we hope you all enjoyed listening to our program tonight and hearing from Ron and his fascinating history. We want to thank you again for tuning in, and please join us again next time. So for all of us at 30 Minutes with Ron, thanks for watching, and goodbye.